we're going to talk about presentations in general, but ultimately, we Kid Rock 2024. I like that, Kyle. That's funny. All right, so we're going to talk about the listing presentation. But before we get into that, any other questions or anything that I can help you guys with from what we talked about yesterday, or just anything that way that?
Russ, did you happen to send the script?
Oh, I totally forgot. Hang on, I'm going to write a note right now. I'm in my office here, so hang on. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I just wasn't sure if I didn't receive it or if it was.
No script. So let me write a note here. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. As soon as this class is over, I will not forget now because I put a note on my desk. I'm going to sticky note on my computer. So.
Oh, I guess.
Awesome. Looks like, yeah, Kyle just put up some of it there. So let me see what he put up there. Oh yeah, the sheet. So that's the sheet. So I'll get the scripts too. In fact, actually, let me throw those in here right now. I still will go through and do that as well. But since we're doing it that way, I'll throw them in the chat box here also.
Thank you for the reminder. Is there a space where there are actually a pool of scripts for example, since I'm brand new, I'm trying to figure out ways to going through talking to my SOI and everything. That first conversation or that first email, are there different scripts, places where I can find those?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, we do have the script book that I can get to you as well. And then, hey guys, so I do have a script book that I can get to you. And then also tomorrow in tomorrow's class, we're going to go through and we'll talk about the SOI and stuff.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
Sound good? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hey, I have 2 people here live with me. So I apologize to you guys that you ended up having to come down here, but I got booted out of the training room again from where I typically am. So tell me your names. Mavish. Okay.
Ryan.
Oh, Ryan. Okay. Yeah, cool. I've seen your name. So awesome. Well, I'm glad to have you guys here. So I'm going to be writing on my iPad and stuff. So some of the stuff I'll have to turn around and show you guys as I write it. But well, either whatever you guys want to do. Like, I mean, I'm fine if you want to stay in here. If you want to do it on Zoom, I'm fine with that too. So I will be doing some writing, but then I can just turn and show it to you after I write it. So if that works for you guys. Okay. Cool. Awesome. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to go through and we're going to talk about listing presentation, but the first little bit, some of what we're going to talk about really just applies to any presentation that you're ever going to do. And so, so think of it this way. In fact, actually, I'm going to share my screen here to write right now on the whiteboard here. Okay. So think of it this way, and I'll turn and show this to you guys in just one second here, is there's 2 parts to any presentation, but since we're talking about the listing presentation, there's 2 parts to it. And the first part of it is what we would say, here, what if I do like this when I'm not writing? So the first part of it is going to be choose me. So think of it that way, specifically on a listing presentation, but also as you are just thinking about just any presentation in general. There's going to be 2 parts to it. The first part of it is choose me. Now, since we're going to be mostly talking about listing presentation today, let me hit on it this way with you. Is think of it this way. Sometimes when you get an opportunity for a listing presentation, what's going to happen is while you're on the phone calling about that, the person is going to say to you, well, hey, what price do you charge? Meaning, what's your commission going to be? Or they may say, well, how much do you think I could sell my home for? Well, so when I have written on here this choose me, then we worry about the price. What I'm referring to there is don't talk about price. So either the price of their house or the price of your commission. Don't talk about that until they have chosen you. So that's the most important thing. In fact, the way I've written that, I'm going to change that here just a little bit. I'm just going to delete this page. So hang on. All right. And give me 1 second here. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so so let me rewrite it here like this. I need a little bit more space here. Oh, thanks, Rebecca. Yeah, for you guys that are online, if you'll put down your name and office in the chat box, would be awesome. Okay, so there's 2 parts to it. It's choose me, then together we will choose the price. Okay, so I've just rewritten it so you guys can see, but just same thing. I just gave it a little bit more room. So choose me, then together we will choose the price. So now let's say that somebody says to you then, okay, great. So how much do you think my home would sell for? How should we answer that if based on what I've said, don't talk price until they have chosen you? And before, well, go ahead, Darren.
Is this in person or is this over the phone?
So I would, either way, could apply to, so I'm going to repeat back for these guys that are here in the room with me, is what he asked was, is that in person or over the phone? And it could go either way, of in person or over the phone. In fact, let me see if I can do.
Because if they're asking, you know, what price and whatever, and it's over the phone, well, that's precisely why we need to meet today, or we need to meet, and then you set the appointment and then set the expectation that you're going to come with, you know, a comparative market analysis and, you know, whatever else you want to set the expectation. But I mean, as far as if it's on the phone or if it's just a pass by, then that would be the way I'd go. That way you're best prepared. And you're in a position where you're mentally prepped for that appointment.
Okay, good. Yeah. So and here's how I typically answer. So if it's over the phone and they were to say to me, well, how much do you think my home is worth? Or how much is your commission going to be? So specifically, if I was talking to like a for sale by owner and they may say, well, how much is your commission going to be? Well, in that scenario, then what I want to do is I want to not answer the question, but I also, if you don't answer the question, then they're feeling like, oh, well, you don't want to answer my question. So for me, usually if it's over the phone, is I'm going to say something like this. Hey, so my commissions are variable, or I may say it as, even in the state of Utah, or for you guys that are in California, in the state of California, commissions are negotiable. And so until you and I have had a chance to sit down and talk about what it is that you expect from me, then I can't really tell you what the commission is going to be. And then that's where I'd kick into what you said, Darren. That's the very reason we should get together if I'm over the phone, is so we can talk about it. Or if I'm in person, I'm going to say, hey, that's great. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. I first need to find out what's most important to you and what you're wanting to accomplish. And then from there, we can come up with a commission that's going to make sense for both of us. Something along those lines. So just keep in mind, don't talk price. Now, why? Why would I say that? Why should we not talk price until we have gotten them to choose us?
Sometimes that'll shut the other party down, like whether it's good or bad, they're just like, oh, okay. And then they're ready to move on. It's kind of your one bargaining chip. After that, they're like, I don't see any value in you. You've given me what I needed. See ya.
Good. Keywords that he said there is if they don't see the value. See, that's the key thing with this. The reason I'm saying there's 2 parts to a presentation. The first part is getting them to choose you. The second part then is we'll talk about the price. Until they have chosen you, they don't see the value, which is exactly right. Until they see the value. So here's what has to happen. So there's 6 things that have to take place in order for me to get them to choose me. So the first thing is there's got to be a connection, or you could think of it as some rapport. Okay. So the first thing that's got to happen is there's got to be a connection or some rapport that takes place. Now we'll talk about how to make that happen. And specifically, as we go through and talk about the listing presentation, I'm going to show you the specifics of how to get that to take place and where that takes place. Now, to some extent, any of you that were on the class either yesterday or even Monday, that's part of the process of getting that connection, to getting them to connect with you. Okay. So that's number 1. Second thing that has to take place is that there has to be some trust. The next 2, I kind of sometimes will put into 1 or 2 categories, is they've got to trust you. I mean, when I say 1 or 2 categories, I will flop these kind of depending on the day that I'm training it. So number 2 is that in order for them to choose you, there's first got to be a connection. And then second, they've got to trust you. Okay. And then number 3 is they have to feel safe. So number 3 then is just safe. Okay. So part of what's going to have them feel safe is the fact that they trust you. So sometimes people will be like, well, isn't that kind of the same thing as that they trust you and so they feel safe? And it, I guess kind of it is, but I like to think of it as, because I have built this connection, they now have a trust in what I'm having to talk to them about, which causes them then to feel safe. Once they have done those 3 things, that's where now they're starting to choose me. Okay, so go ahead.
But building that rapport ahead of time, I think, also helps give them a feeling of being safe along with the trust.
Perfect. Yes, yeah. Thanks, Ryan. That's exactly right. Is what he said, and I'm not sure if you guys heard him or not, but what he said is basically building that rapport ahead of time is going to help them to feel safe, which is right on. That's exactly right. Okay, good. Then number 4, the number 4 things that has to happen is we have to create value. So the number 4 is going to be just then create value. So I've got to create value. They've got to see some value in what we're talking about in order for them to then want to choose me. Is they've got to do that. No. So how do we do that? Oh, good. It's like worried I'd turn around and be cracked. I just dropped my iPad. All right. Number 5 then is you have to separate yourself. So the 5th thing that has to happen is we've got to separate ourselves from basically the competition. And I'll show you how we're going to do that throughout this process. But essentially, just think of it as what we're doing as we do this presentation is that we are trying to create this scenario where they can now feel safe with us. We've created value. We've separated ourselves from everybody else that's out there. Now that we've done that, then we can go to number 6, which is to close. So number 6 then is I've got to close. I got to ask for the business, basically. Okay. Now, so once I have done those 6 things, now we can talk price. So until that happens, though, I am not going to talk price. So no matter what they ask me, I'm going to say things like, hey, so if I'm over the phone, I'm going to say things like, that'll be the first thing we talk about when I get out to your house. We'll talk about the price. Or commissions are negotiable and we're going to be able to come to an agreement. So I will say to them, don't worry about what the commission's going to be at this point, because until we talk about what you want to accomplish and what we're going to do, I don't really know what that commission is going to look like. But here's what you can rest assured with is if we can't come to an agreement, then it doesn't matter. So we'll figure it out. We'll figure out how to come to an agreement. Now, the reason I'm doing that again is because until I have created value and separated myself in their mind, there's no difference between me and any other agent out there. And that's the biggest problem, is that people will look at real estate agents and there's no difference. And in their mind, all we do is put it on the MLS. And because all we do is put it on the MLS, then why should they need to pay a 6% commission to me when they could go do it with somebody else and get it for cheaper, basically, is in their mind, is what they're thinking. So do you have a question or a comment, Kelly? I just noticed you're unmuted, which is fine. I'm going to take that as no. Okay. Cool. Okay. Any questions on that from anybody on terms of just as we go through this and talk about the listing presentation, there's 2 parts to it. Is we got to get them to choose me, then we talk about price. All right. We good to go for the next piece then? All right. I'm going to open a new page here then. So now let's talk about, so what we're going to do for the rest of what we're going to talk about is we're going to assume that I've been prospecting and I somehow have scheduled an appointment. So I've got an appointment to go meet with someone and I've now shown up to their house. Okay. So as I get to the property, then what I'm going to do is as I pull up to the property, I want to try to find something that I could talk to them about the property right off the bat that is a plus. So whether it's the curb appeal, it's a flower bed that they have, just the way the home looks, something like that, okay? Because the first thing that's going to happen, so the number one thing that I'm going to do when I get there is we like to use the acronym of TAP, T-A-P, okay? So TAP is an acronym that stands for thank, acknowledge, and promise. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do as we get to their property is I want to do this tap. I want to thank them, I want to acknowledge them, and I want to promise. So, which as I'm looking at how I've written that good luck reading it, but thank, acknowledge, and promise. Okay. So let me show you what that looks like. So let's say that I am going to the property, I get there, I'm gonna, as I knock on the door, they open the door, and hi, I'm Russ from Century 21. They invite me in. Now, to some extent, if this is somebody from your SOI that you know real well, you may not have to worry as much about this. But keeping in mind that the first thing we're trying to do is create the connection and the rapport, right? So I knock on the door, they open the door, I introduce myself, I'm Russ with Century 21. Hey, I just wanted to thank you for meeting with me and letting me come out and talk to you. And then the next piece, so I'm going to thank them. Then the next is I want to acknowledge. So this is why I was saying, when you pull up to the house, if you can find something to acknowledge them about, of, hey, I noticed when I pulled up that, man, you've got a great curb appeal on your home. It shows really well. Or I noticed that flower bed out there and how beautiful that flower bed is. Whose handiwork is that? Like, ultimately, I want to acknowledge something from them. Now, what if though I get there and the house is just a dog? Like, it's just a junk, it's not something I would could honestly say it looks great. Well, if that's the case, then what I want to do is just acknowledge their time. So I'm going to just acknowledge them for taking the time. So I'm going to thank them. I'm going to acknowledge something about the property if I can. And then I want to add some type of a promise. So I'm acknowledging, wow, the curb appeal looks great. Your flower bed's awesome. Or I love the color of the door that you guys painted the front door. I mean, like, it could be anything like that, but just acknowledge something. Then I want to promise. Hey, so I promise you that at the end of my presentation, I'm going to give you some really good information. Now, think of it this way. Anytime you're doing a presentation, whether it's a buyer or a seller, you really should do that. Thank them, acknowledge, and then promise them. Thank, acknowledge, promise. So that's why we always say it's just this tap. So I'm going to thank, acknowledge, and then promise. Now, the next thing that's going to happen is, as part of that is then, and I usually will I'm going to just draw a line for me. I just throw a line across it. And then on that line, I'm going to write, look at the home. Okay. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I want to go take a look at the home. Now, let me explain on that, because there's two parts, or two ways you can look, not two parts, two ways you can look at going and looking at the home. Is I can either have them show me through the house, or I can say to them, I want to look at the home through the eyes of a buyer. So I want to go discover the home the way that a buyer is going to discover it. Now, there is not a right or a wrong answer of, do you do it? Do you have them show you through, or do you go on your own? How I usually decide is, for me, it's based on two things on how I'm going to decide. Do I have them show me through the house, or do I just go look at it on my own? The first thing of how I'm going to decide that is, do I feel like, now keep in mind, going back to what we're trying to create is a connection or some rapport. So if when I get there, I thank, acknowledge, and promise, I feel like I need to create a better connection or some rapport with them, then I'm going to have them show me through the home. That's 100%. If I feel like that, because that is a great opportunity to create the connection and get some rapport by having them show you through. And as they point stuff out of, you can really, oh, wow, whose idea was that? And how did you come up with that idea, or whatever? So I'm going to have them show me through, is how I'm going to create that connection and rapport. The other way the second piece that factors into it is, do I have them show it to me or not? So let's say that I have great rapport with them, but this number two way is, I've got another appointment right after this one, and I'm worried about getting done with this appointment in time. If that's the case, I'm not going to have them show me through. So that's kind of, think of it that way. The advantage to having them walk you through the property is it gives you a chance to create a connection and some rapport. The downside to having them show you through the property is going to be that it's going to take a little bit longer. So if I have good connection and rapport and I want to get through the appointment a little quicker for whatever reason, then I will just say, hey, let me go look through the home. I want to discover it through the eyes of the buyer. It is also an opportunity to then talk to them and explain to them that as we have people come and look at the home, it is better for the seller not to be there. It is way better for the buyer to be able to walk through the home without the seller in the house, because, and I just explained to them that not all buyers will feel comfortable going and opening, you know, a closet or whatever if the seller is in the home. If the seller's not there, they were more likely to do it. Now, so let me pause on that to just kind of talk about when I'm showing the home, when I'm representing the buyer and I'm showing them to the home, I always tell the buyer, hey, you're looking at this house to make a decision if you want to buy it, that you're going to live in. So feel comfortable, even if the seller is there, going and opening closets, open cupboards, whatever, like go and look, discover what you need to discover to find out if this house is going to work for you. So, okay, so now back into the seller side. So I'm going to go look at the home, and the way I'm deciding on if I'm going to have them show me through is time and connection. If I feel like I need a better connection, have them show you through. If you're good with it, then you don't need them to show you through. All right. So that's number one, is basically the tap and look at the home. Number two, then, the second thing that I'm going to do is I usually will write this one down as map. So think of the first is tap. This next one is map. The map is more about motivation. So the acronym is motivation, their ability, and price. Okay, so that's the next piece of this, is about the map. Or I sometimes will write it down as game plan. But think of it this way. So I've written it down here as map or game plan. Think of it this way. Everyone likes to know where we're going. Meaning, if it, and now most of you guys are online, but for you guys that are here, if I had said to you, hey, okay, at one point during the class, a bus is going to pull up out front and we're going to go jump on the bus. What's the first question you would ask me? Yeah, notice that. Like the first thing you were going to say to me is, okay, well, where are we going? So the reason I always do that and ask that question is to show you we all want to know where we're headed. So at an appointment, when you get out to go on a listing presentation, the people are going to be a little bit nervous. You might be a little bit nervous, but they're going to be a little bit nervous because most people don't go through the process of buying or selling a home very often, meaning like it's usually years in between for most of the people. So they're probably a little nervous. And if it's not somebody you know, they're unsure of, do they want to work with you, any of those things. So part of what we want to do is, after we have done the thank, acknowledge, promise, I've now gone and looked at the property, I come back, and whether we're sitting in the kitchen or in the living room or wherever we're sitting, the next step is, okay, let me tell you what we're going to talk about. So for me, I'm not saying that to them, hey, let me give you you could say, let me give you the game plan. But I usually say, hey, let me give you an overview of what we're going to talk about. Okay, so then now I'm going to give them an overview. So there are 4 parts to this overview. The first part that we're going to talk about, and I'll give you what you want to say on this, is I want to talk about their needs, wants, and expectations. So the first part of this, sorry, I'm trying to spelling and talking at the same time, not so easy. So what I want to do is I'm going to tell them that the first thing we're going to talk about is their needs, wants, and their expectations. So needs, wants, expectations. So here's what it's going to sound like. So we've just gone and looked at the property. I come in and I'm saying, okay, let me give you an overview of what we're going to talk about. The first thing we're going to talk about is what your needs are and what your wants are, and ultimately your expectations. And then I'll share with you what my expectations of you as a seller would be. So that's the first thing, okay? Then number 2, or B, is we're going to then talk about, after we've talked about their needs, wants, and expectations, we're then going to talk about, I'm going to write it on here as marketing, but it's actually not marketing. But I usually will say it more that way to them, is I will put it on here as a, we're going to talk about, for you guys, I'm writing it down as marketing. So let me tell you how I'm going to say it to them. So I'm going to say, hey, thanks for letting me take a look at your home. Wow, it's beautiful. You did a great job, blah, blah, blah. Let me give you an overview of what we're going to talk about. So the first thing we're going to go through and we're going to talk about is your needs, your wants, and ultimately your expectations. I will then share with you what I would expect from you as a seller. After we've talked about your needs and wants, then we're going to go through and talk about, what do I do to get a home sold? So I'm writing it down here as marketing. But what I want to make sure you guys understand, when I say, I'm going to say to them, we're going to talk about what I do to get a home sold, it's very unlikely that what I'm going to talk about is the marketing in terms of the way that you're thinking of marketing. Meaning, we typically think about it in terms of marketing as like, here's all the websites and here's the flyers and the da 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 da. Like, that's not what I mean when I say it as marketing. But I'm to some extent explaining it to them that way, as if I'm going to talk to you about what I do to get a home sold. Now, I'll show you what I mean by that as we go through this and as we get into that piece. But just know I'm writing it down as marketing, but it's really, in fact, actually, let me add this to it. Let me write it this way. I'm going to write it down as create value / separate yourself. So remember yourself. I'm running out of space. Okay. So remember back here on this, that there's two parts, the connection, choose me, then the price. Ultimately, as we're doing this whole presentation, it is about me being able to create the value and separate myself. So ultimately, when I say here, this marketing piece of, we're going to talk about what I do to get a home sold, what I mean by that is this is where I'm going to then, in that section is where I'm going to create the value and I'm going to separate myself. Okay. All right. And then C, or number 3, is we're going to then talk about the market. Now, when I say we're going to talk about the market, what I mean by that is we're going to talk about the macro. We're going to then talk about pricing, and then we'll do CMA. Okay. So on this piece of it, so and again, just as a reminder, what I'm doing here is I'm still just giving them an overview. So let me walk you through where we're at now. So I've done the TAP, the thank, acknowledge, promise. I've gone and looked at the house. I've come back from looking at the house. I've said, all right, let me give you an overview of what we're going to talk about. We're first going to go through and talk about your needs, wants, and ultimately your expectations. I'll share with you what I would expect from you as a seller. Then after that, we're going to talk about, what do I do to get a home sold? What makes me different? And I'll say it that way to them. We're going to then talk about what I do to get a home sold, and ultimately, like, what makes me different than every other agent. And I'll even say to them, because not every agent's created the same. When you hire an agent, you are not always getting the exact same thing. So I'm going to share with you what I do. Once we have talked about that, then we're going to go through and we're going to talk about the market and what's going on in the real estate market. So I've written it down for you guys as macro here, meaning we're going to talk about big picture, what's going on in the market. And then we're going to talk about how that affects their pricing of their home. And then finally, we'll then talk about the price of their home, the CMA. Okay, so that's what that piece is meaning so far. All right, next. D then, letter D, or number 4, is going to be close. Now, let me show you how that works. So I'm going to walk you through this like top to bottom. But ultimately, the close is more of a trial close, or I am kind of setting up for the close, if you want to think of it that way. So I thank, acknowledge, promise. I go look at the house. I come back. Let me give you an overview. First, we're going to talk about your needs, wants, and expectations and what you would expect from me. I'll share with you what I would expect from you. We'll then talk about what I do to get a home sold. What makes me different than every other agent that's out there, because we're not all created equal. Once we've talked about that, then we're going to go through and we're going to talk about what's going on in the market today. And how does what's going on in the market today affect the price of your home? And then we'll ultimately then get to what is the price of your home. And then after that, if you're comfortable and confident that I'm the right agent to help you get your home sold, then I'm going to ask you to sign some paperwork. Okay? And what do you think they're going to say when I say, okay? Yeah, they want to say, okay. So just know that's how it's going to happen. So that's kind of the overview. Okay. So keep in mind, that's the first piece of what we're doing. All right. Then next. So so number 3 then on here. So the first was tap. Second is the game plan or the overview of what we're going to do, or I like to call the map. And when I say map, remember, this is where we're going to discover their motivation, their ability, and then we're going to talk about the price. So really kind of all the rest of this falls under that map section. Okay. So number 3 then is going to be, I'm going to write it up here as the needs, come on, wants, and expectations. But ultimately, I'm going to put in parentheses, questions. Okay, so number 3 then is going to be the needs, wants, and expectations section. So remember from that last page, initially it was just more of, I'm going to give you an overview of what we're going to talk about. So I had said, let me give you an overview. We're going to talk about your needs, wants, and expectations. So to begin with was just the overview. Now here on number 3 this is where we're now actually going to ask them the questions to discover their needs, their wants, and their expectations. So think of it that way, is ultimately what I'm wanting to do with number 3 is to discover what are their needs, wants, and their expectations. Okay. All right. So how am I going to do that? Well, here's typically what I'm going to start with is I'm going to give you guys just a number of questions. But here's where we will tie in what we talked about yesterday in class, where yesterday we talked about the directives, if you guys remember that. So today is on this piece of it is where I'm going to now use the directives. This is where I'm going to use a describe for me, share with me, tell me about, help me understand. Okay, so I'm going to start with a directive. And usually for me, I'm going to do something like this. I'm going to do a tell me about, let me change colors here. Tell me about your past experience. Now, you don't have to do it that way. In fact, I've heard George say many times, his first question is usually share with me ultimately what you're wanting to accomplish. So if you want to use that one as your first one, that's fine. Share with me ultimately what it is you're wanting to accomplish is great. For me, I will use one of two. I either will start with, tell me about your past experience with real estate agents, or I will do a describe for me the ideal real estate agent. So remember yesterday we talked about it as describe for me your ideal home. On this one, I may do describe for me the ideal real estate agent. And then same thing with what we talked about yesterday. I'm going to do, okay, what else? Keep going, tell me more. What else? Keep going, tell me more. So remember, typically what ends up happening is most agents tend to be too, what's the word I want to use? Most agents tend to be too surface level. I guess that's probably the way to say it, is when they ask questions, they tend to stay at this surface level rather than digging down deeper. So that's the idea of, hey, tell me more, keep going, what else, is so that we are forcing them into digging deeper down into their past experience with it, okay? So I'll give you some other ideas with this. Now, typically what you're going to want to do under this needs, wants, and expectations is you're going to ask a bunch of questions. So I'm going to want to just keep asking question after question after question from them so that I am discovering what is important. So let me give you an idea of, well, actually, let me give you a couple other questions first. So I'm going to just bullet point these, but just keep in mind as I'm saying this, you always want to start these questions with a describe for me or share with me, tell me about, or help me understand. One of those, it all needs to start with that. But the other ones that you can do, so you could do a, hey, share with me what's important about timing. So some of the other things that I will ask questions on is timing. When I'm asking them that, what I'm looking for is what is going to be important to them in the timing of getting the property sold. So I'm asking, hey, so share with me what's most important in terms of timing. And then as they share with me, whatever it is, well, we want to get sold and get it done before spring, let's say that they said, okay, then I'm going to follow up with that. Okay, so tell me more about that. Meaning, like, what is it about spring that, you know, why is that important to you or whatever? So I'm going to ask, so tell me more about that. Like, what is it about spring? Then they're going to start to share with me more about spring. So remember, I'm going to ask the question, but then I want to try to dig 2 or 3 questions deeper into figuring out more of the why. Now you'll see why that's important in a few minutes. The next one that I'll ask questions about is going to be pricing. So share with me what's going to be most important in terms of pricing. And what I'm looking for on that, I intentionally word it that way, which is a little bit vague on saying pricing, because what I want to find out from them is, are they going to respond about the commission, or are they going to respond about the price of the home? And I don't know which way they're going to interpret that. So I will just usually say, hey, so tell me how price is going to affect your decision. That's usually the way I will ask it, is how is price going to affect your decision? And again, if I say it that way, they could come back, well, we're going to list with the person who has the lowest commission, or they could say we need a certain price or we can't get the home sold. So that's more what I'm looking for in the pricing. Let's see. The other one that I usually will do, and I usually save this one for the end, is going to be around concern, or you could say it as a fear. Okay. So usually I'm going to ask those other questions and I'm going to try to get them talking about it. So tell me about your past experience. Now, as part of the tell me about your past experience, I'm going to ask them about, tell me about the things that the agents did that you liked. What do you wish they would have done? What should have they done differently? So that's what, when I'm saying you're going to dig deeper on it, that's what I mean by it, is you want to be asking more and more questions. Now, just to remind you guys from yesterday of what we talked about is, ultimately what I'm looking for is to create this connection or the rapport. Well, I know that the way I'm going to get that connection and the rapport is going to be based upon them feeling like I am listening to them, that I'm hearing them, and that I understand what is important to them. So that's why I'm going to be asking, hey, so tell me about your past experience. What did you like? What did you not like? What do you wish the agent would have done? What do you think they should have done? Oh, another one. This is a really good one to ask under this as well, is what would the experience need to be like, or what would I as an agent have to do for you to, after this transaction is over, I'm going to ask you to give me a rating, you know, to give me a 5-star review. What would I have to do in order to earn a 5-star review? So think of it that way, as part of that's what you want to be doing, is asking them the questions of, what are your expectations of me, that after this is over, you would say, oh, that was the best experience I ever had. And I will sometimes even joke with them of even saying to them, hey, so what would the experience need to be like, so that afterwards you would be like, well, that was the best 10% commission we ever paid. Like, I might joke with them of saying that, because then they'll be like, what, 10%? And I'll be like, I'm just kidding. But for real, what would I have to do for you to be like, hey, that would have been worth paying a 10% commission? What would that need to look like? Now, why would I want to ask that question?
You want repeat business, repeat referrals.
Good. Yes, Marissa, exactly right. Is I want to get referrals from these guys. So don't be afraid to even say that as part of this. What would the experience need to look like for you to be willing to go out and have your car wrapped that says, list your home with Russ? It was such a good experience. Like, what does that need to look like for you to want to refer me to all your friends and neighbors? And then they're going to then tell, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Are you also using it as a way to gauge where they feel, or how they feel about commissions as a whole? Or is it more so just for the referral?
Yeah, so to some extent, yes, I want referrals, 100%, Darren, but I also would say I'm doing it, no question about what you're saying, is I'm a little bit testing to see, and I'm also like setting it up to saying, like, tell me what you would expect from me that you would be willing to pay a little bit more commission, without straight out saying that. So yeah, no question, that's part of it. Okay. Trying to think if there's anything else. That pretty much covers it there. But think of it this way, is I ultimately just want to be asking enough of those questions that I am getting them to share with me what they would expect, so that as we go to number 4, so let me, let's go down to number 4 here. I feel like I'm forgetting something that it'll come to me if I am. I'll go back to it. All right. So number 4 then, remember I said to you that we called it initially I called it the game plan or an overview. That's what we're going to do. Number 4 was the marketing. Sorry. When I said that we were going to be talking, so first was needs, wants, and expectations. Then second would be, what do I do to get, what separates myself? Okay. So think of it that way, is I'm going to write it here as separate yourself. Or, and I'll put in parentheses, create value. Okay. So number 4 then is I'm going to separate myself. I'm going to create value, or the way I said it to you guys that you had written it down was marketing. That what do I do to get a home sold? This is where we're going to do the what do I do to get a home sold. Okay. So on this, what do I do to get a home sold is where what, now here's the hardest part. Actually, this is the biggest challenge of me teaching you guys this stuff, is this section. This section right here is the part that, and the reason I say it's the hardest part for me to teach you is because I don't know what they're going to say up in number 3. Like, I have some ideas of what they're going to say, but I don't know for sure what they're going to say. So let me give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So I have been training agents, and specifically new agents, a lot for the last 15 years. So I spent the last 15 years. Probably the number 1 question that I have gotten asked from agents is, I need a good listing presentation. And what they mean when they say that to me is not what we're talking about today. Usually what they mean when they say I need a good listing presentation is, what they mean is, I need some good stuff to give to people. Like, meaning when I go out on the listing presentation, I want to have a really slick binder that has some cool pages in it. Like, that's usually what they mean when they say I need a good listing presentation. Well, let me break it to you probably this way. You are the listing presentation. Like, that's you. So if you put together a binder that had this really good looking stuff in it, I hate to break it to you, but they're not choosing you because of your binder. Now, I did have an agent one time challenge me on that basically she said that the reason people list with her is because she has some really cool flyers. She's like, my flyers are really nice. And I was like, okay. Like, I mean, I'm not going to ever argue. If somebody said that, like, okay, great. I'm glad you got really nice flyers. That's cool. And I'm glad people are choosing you because of your flyers. But here's what I know. They're not choosing you because of your flyers. They're choosing you because of you. You are the presentation. And so that's why the most important thing you can do is get good at asking the questions. The best thing you can do is ask relevant questions. So think of it this way.
Russ.
Number 3 on there is about you discovering from them what is going to be most important, how they're going to choose who they're going to list with. That's probably the best way to sum it up. Think of it as that you're playing. So Marissa, you'll hate this one, by the way, is you're playing Jeopardy, because I know you hate the game Jeopardy now. So think of it as you're playing Jeopardy, and what's happening though is all of the answers are in their head. In Jeopardy, the answers are on the board. You have to come up with the question. Well, that's what this game is. The answers, the secret to getting them to list with you and to pay you the commission you deserve are in their head. Your job is to ask questions in such a way to discover that, so that now in number 4, where we talk about separate yourself, you can do that and separate yourself to where they go, yeah, no, I would pay whatever commission you want to charge me because I can see you're who I want to help me get the home sold. So hopefully that makes sense. So now with that though, let me give you an example. So we had a time early on now, and I think I mentioned yesterday's to you guys that I started learning this process of the needs analysis stuff. I started learning this back in it was 1999 actually. I mean, a little bit I was introduced to it. So probably I should say it this way. I was introduced to it the way I'm training you guys in it. It was late 97 that I first was introduced to it. 99 is when I went to get trained in how to train it. Now, as part of that though, we had a guy, or so early on when I first was learning this, we had a guy that was from California. He had the opportunity of getting a listing at that time. So go back in time, rewind to what it was probably, you know, like I said, 97, late 97. In the training that I was in, this guy had an opportunity to go get a listing that was at that time in California, $15 million. So it was a $15 million listing back in 99. So what would that be worth today in California? Probably 80 million. Who knows? Like, I mean,
That's
huge.
the number I want to say, 80.
Is 80? That's what you would say? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Nagme. All right, tell me it again. Sorry.
Nagme.
Emphasize the G or no?
Say it again.
Do I emphasize the G or no?
Well, the G is a re sound, so it's Nagme. I know it's
Nagme.
not a letter that exists in the English language, so a lot of people turn
Where is
it
it
into
from
like
anyway? Where's it from?
Iran.
Oh, okay, cool.
Mhm.
All right. So say it one more time for me.
Nagme.
Nagme.
That's pretty close.
Close
That's
enough?
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to get a yes, you did it right. Not a that's close. I'm horrible. All right. I'm going to just come up with a nickname. Do you have a nickname?
I don't. Over the many years, people have asked me that, and I've kind of have been pretty stubborn about sticking to my name.
I'm going to
As
come up
long
with
as
one for
people
you.
try it, I appreciate it.
You're
and
happy?
I'm
Okay.
happy.
So you'll forgive me if I screw it up every time.
Absolutely.
Okay. So now I don't remember. I was going to say something to you
We were
about
talking about the
Oh
pricing
yeah,
in
what do you
California.
think? Yeah, what do you think the price? If it was 15 million 20 years ago, 23 years ago, how much is it worth today?
Yeah, I'd say 80 could be right.
Okay, we'll go with 80. So imagine you've got the opportunity to go on an $80 million.
I was
What?
gonna say it's worth. I was gonna say it's worth whatever the buyer's willing to pay and the seller's willing to accept.
Well, that's true. You're exactly right.
Straight out of the
But
exam
probably-
questions.
Yeah, exactly. But in today's world, that's probably we're going to go with 80 million. Okay. I don't know what it's worth, but imagine you've got an opportunity to go out on a listing that it's an $80 million listing. Okay. Now, what happened though is, so the guy that was training us in this, he had said, look, if you get an opportunity to go out on a multi-million-dollar listing, and in fact, the guy that trained me on this, I'll tell you, you get an opportunity to get an $80 million listing, I'll call him and he'll go with you and get the listing for you. Like if you get that opportunity. So he had offered that. He just said, hey, you guys get an opportunity. Well, this guy in the class raises his hand and says, I got a chance for a $15 million listing. Would you come with me on it? And he said, yeah. Now, just kind of so you know, yes, he'll go with you. I'll go with you. But for him, he was like, I get part of the commission though, if I'm going with you to help you get it. So he says, yeah, that's fine. You help me get the $15 million list. And I don't remember how much you offered to pay him. But so he goes out with him on the listing and went through exactly this process. So remember, number 3 there is about discovering what are the answers to the tests that are in the person's head. How are they going to make the decision of who they're going to list with? Well, so what he does is he goes out there and he sits down with this lady. Now, let me give you the background on this story. This lady was in her 80s. Her husband had passed away, and I don't remember, within the last year of him going out on this listing. So her husband had passed away. She now has decided this house is just too big. She doesn't want to keep it on her own, and she wants to move. So a number of agents had found out about this, and this seller now was going to interview these agents for the job of selling her home. She had already met with a few, and this agent had gotten an opportunity. So, and I don't remember how he got the opportunity, but he gets the opportunity. So they show up to this listing appointment. And when they sat down with her, they went through this process and said, okay, tell me about your past experience. Share with me, you know, what's important about timing, what's important about the price, and blah, blah. And then, like I said, the last one that I always ask them is, and the reason I do it last is because I've had a chance to build some connection and rapport by asking questions. And then I'm going to ask, so tell me about your biggest concern, or share with me what your biggest fear is on getting your home sold. Well, so the guy that trained me in this, he then says to the lady, so share with us, what is your biggest concern about getting your home sold? Or what is it that would keep you up at night? Or what are you worried about? And she said, okay, I have already met with 3 or 4, I don't remember the number, other agents. And as part of meeting with those agents, every one of them talked about all the people they were going to bring through my house. She said, like, they said they were going to put it on their office tour, and they were going to put it on the this and that. And so the seller in her mind is just picturing tons of people walking through her house, even though that might not have been really what was going to happen. In her mind, though, she's picturing just all these people coming and walking through her house. And she said, I don't know if you noticed the white carpet that was in the I don't know what room, one of the rooms. And they said, yeah, we noticed that white carpet. And she said, well, that was a present that my husband bought for me, that he had that carpet handmade in Peru or something. And I don't know, remember all the details, but it was expensive carpet. They had spent $100,000 or something like that on the carpeting in this room, and it was white. And she said, all I can picture is all of these people coming and walking through my house and tromping across that white carpet. And she said, I recognize that when I sell my home, when I move out, that somebody might come in and rip the carpet out. I get it. She said, but that was a birthday present, and I don't want it to be destroyed while I'm still living in the house. That was her biggest concern. So now let's forward down here to number 4, where I said, this is where we're going to create value and separate ourselves. See, your objective up in number 3 is to discover that. And remember, I said to you, the hardest part for me to train you on number 4 is because I don't know what number 3 is going to be. But you've got to discover what number 3 is. And what I will tell you is there's typically going to be 1 or 2 things that are most important and that they're most worried about. And if you can discover what that is, that's what you talk about then in number 4, is you're going to talk about what you're going to do for it. Now, let me go back to, I was going to see if I can find, let me grab a binder here. Okay, good. Remember I said to you guys that a lot of times what people want for their listing presentation is like a binder that then has these pages in it that it's like you could, I guess I got to get closer so you guys can see, that you could flip through and be like, here's how many websites we put your home on, and here's what our flyers look like, and here's the this and that. Well, that's what typically people want to do as a listing presentation. Well, I had at a different company that I was with where I had done the training, and one of the managers, we had a manager meeting, and the manager said, I want to show everyone, all the other managers, what I do to train my agents on a listing presentation. And I'm not lying at what I'm about to say to you. This truly happened. He showed up with a binder like this, and then in this binder, he opened it up and he had the first page was like about the company. So I was with Coldwell Banker at the time, and it had Coldwell Banker and it said like 1907 or something like that. And no lie, this is what his listing presentation looked like. All right, let me tell you about Coldwell Banker. Coldwell Banker started in 1907, and it was born out of the fires that were in the Bay Area. And what happened was Colbert Coldwell and Benjamin Banker, which by the way is where that the name Coldwell Banker came from, is Colbert Coldwell and Benjamin Banker. So these 2 guys noticed all of these people that were just taking advantage of people because of the fires in San Francisco. And so they decided to start a real estate company where they were not going to take advantage of people. Next page. part of Coldwell Banker is we're part of the Cardis Relocation Network. Cardis Relocation is one of the largest relocation. Like, could you imagine that? And no lie, when I say this, I'm not lying about this. He sat down and did that with us, this manager. He went page by page through that for about an hour and a half. And like, you get to the point where you're just like, okay, please just go. Like, stop. Go ahead, Marissa.
I've had that happen. I'm not even joking. And I was like, I kept looking at my husband and like thinking this guy would get the hint that we were so not engaged, or like, and this was years ago, like 15 years ago, but we were just like, I finally was like, you know what? I need to go check on my baby, like upstairs. And I didn't want to go back downstairs because it was bad. I was like, I don't want to know about your company. Like, I want to know about selling my home, you know?
So it was an actual agent. It wasn't just some other thing.
No, it was an agent. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. So here's the other thing. Thank you. Thank you for reinforcing that. That is what people, that agent was probably trained by this manager that I was just telling you about, I'll bet.
1907. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, no lie. That is what he did. Now, here's the other thing that most agents, just so you guys know, most agents' listing presentation looks like this. Let me tell you how great I am. I am the #1 agent in my cubicle. There is not anybody in my cubicle that's better than me. Like, that's kind of what they want to show all their, look at this award I got and look at this and that. Like, that's what most agents want to do as a presentation. That is not a listing presentation. See, what you want to do is go discover what is important to them. See, once they found out that what this lady was worried about was the carpet, now all you got to do is show how you're going to protect the carpet and you're going to get the listing. When you can discover what is important to them, see, make it about them. And if you'll do that, just what Marissa said, I promise you, you show up to somebody's house with that and sit and go through page by page, and they're sitting there going, like, actually, Marissa, what he was hoping is typically what happens is this. Hey, can we just sign the papers and you can stop it? We'll just sign right now. Like, that's the other way to get a listing.
Absolutely, probably wanted that. Yeah, and you're so bored to death that you're probably like really on the verge of doing it just to get in the house.
Well, I mean, motivation is a really strong tool. Yesterday, I had a listing presentation, which was kind of unorthodox for me. We went out to dinner. We went to Texas Roadhouse, and everything was going well. I was able to get the listing at 7%, which was great. But,
nice.
I wasn't able to close the deal until I found out another motivation, which was, I explained to her how my marketing techniques will, lead to more money in her pocket after paying her bills. Cause this is a woman that's, in the middle of bankruptcy right now. So anyway, the point is I discovered that she had a child that lives in Australia who, at this time, about a month ago, just had their baby. I had their first baby, so her first grandchild. And she said, I haven't been able to afford the ability to go to Australia at this point. And I said, well, with my marketing techniques and, combined with the fact that, Century 21 touches 1 in 5 transactions in the Wasatch Front, 1 in 4 transactions along the Wasatch Front, we can put between $6,000 and $10,000 more in your pocket based on our numbers. And at that point, I didn't really have to finish. She was just like, give me the thing, I'm going to sign. So, I mean, finding those motivations and finding out that stuff is more powerful than any other tool in our arsenal, in my opinion. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're right on. Good job. That's exactly what, see, that's the key. Once you discovered what she really wanted was the money to be able to go see her grandchild, boom, you win. That's exactly right. Okay, good. Thank you. All right, so that's what we're doing. So on this separate yourself then is going to be based upon what you discovered up there in section 3. Now, how are you going to implement that? So let me show you what that looks like in terms of that listing I was telling you about. So she was worried about the white carpet. So what they did for number 4, that separates yourself, creates the value, is what they did is said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're not going to put it on an office tour or a board tour. We're not going to let anybody come through the home unless they have been pre-approved. Because as you would guess, you go do an open house on a $15 million house, you're going to have a ton of people that come to it just because they want to go see what a $15 million house looks like inside. So what they said is, we're not going to do that. Instead, we're only going to let people come through your home who have been pre-approved. So we're going to make sure that they have been pre-approved before we even let them come into the house. Then once we have done that, when they do get here, now to some extent, tons of people were at least doing this back in March and April, May, was we're going to go buy a box of booties from the medical supply store, and anybody that comes through the house has to put on a pair of booties, which, by the way, I would recommend that over telling people take your shoes off. Meaning, like pre-COVID, agents would put on the MLS, take your shoes off. Like, I don't know about you guys, but when I go out to show properties, I hate that I got to take my shoes off when I go into, if you go to 5, 6 houses, like you're constantly, instead, go buy a box of booties that you can put at the front door and say, put these on as you walk through the house. That's better to me than take your shoes off. So, but here's what happened. What they said is, we're going to go buy a box of booties that we'll put at the front door, that when somebody comes through your house, we're going to ask them to put those on, so you don't have to worry about them tracking, stuff across your white carpet. Guess who got the listing over a $5 box of booties? Was them. See, that's the key. That's what you've got to figure out, is when you can discover up in number 3 what their needs, wants, and expectations are. When you discover that, then number 4 becomes really easy. If you don't discover that, then number 4 can be hard. But it's just what Darren was just saying. Once he discovered that what was most important to her is she wanted to get enough money that she could afford to go see her grandchild, it's like you win. As soon as you discover that, you got the listing. Now what you just have to do then in number 4 is present back to them, this is how we're going to make sure that we take care of that need. So let me just give you a few ideas of some things that do come up though. Part of the things that tend to come up most often. Now, like I said, it's hard for me to tell you everything, because prior to hearing the story about the box of booties, I would have never thought to tell you in a class, hey, the thing that's going to get you a listing is you go buy a box of booties and tell people they got to put them on. Like, I would have never thought of that. So just know though, that typically what Darren said is usually going to be the case. The kinds of things that you would see in a flip chart book, like we were talking about, are never going to be the thing that gets the listing. It's not. It's instead going to be figuring out that they want to go see their grandchild and they want to make sure they have enough money. That is the type of stuff. When you can discover that, you'll get the listing. And as Darren said, at 7%. That's how you can get it at 7%, is when you can discover that and then present to them, here's what we're going to do to make sure you get to take care of that, is when they're going to then not really care so much about what you charge. All right. But here's a few of the things that do tend to come up pretty commonly is communication. When you're asking people about their past experience in terms of working with other agents, it is not going to be uncommon for them to come back to you and say, I had a bad experience with an agent that didn't communicate with me very well. That is not going to be uncommon for you to have people say things about that. So here's what you're going to do. When you're presenting back to them in this separate yourself, what's more important than me telling you the communication stuff is this. What you want to be doing with number 4 is when you're presenting back to the people of, okay, you mentioned you were worried about the carpet. And then here's how I would say it. Most agents, in fact, let me write this down so you've got it. You're going to say it to them this way. Most agents blank, I blank. So you're going to, and you don't have to say it exactly that way, but essentially what I'm saying to people is this. So that lady on the carpet, I would have said, hey, most agents are going to do exactly what your fear is. They're going to bring all these people. They're going to try to show it to as many people. They want it to look like to you that they've brought a ton of people through your home. I don't work that way. Instead, for me, I only want to bring qualified people to your house. See, I'm going to take what their concern was and say, most agents are going to do exactly what you're afraid of, but I don't do that way. I work differently than other agents. See, that's the whole idea of separating yourselves. So whatever you come up with in number 3, you're going to present back to them of, most agents do this, but I do this. See, I'm creating this separation of, I'm not the same as everyone else out there. They're like this. I'm over here on this end of the spectrum, different. And if you can get them to see that, that's where you then win. So in communication. So let's say that they had a bad experience of communication. Here's how I'm going to present it. Is I'm going to say, hey, I am sorry that you had that experience of an agent listing your home and then not communicating with you. Unfortunately, most agents do that, but not me. I'm different than every other agent out there in that what I'm going to do with you is I'm going to have a set time every week that I'm going to contact you to update you on what's going on. So let me give you a quick example. Is I've got a listing right now that is under contract. And with the seller that I'm under contract with on right now, with him, one of the things he told me is he wanted to be communicated with on Monday mornings. Great. What time? So he told me somewhere between 9 and 10 on Mondays. Great. So most agents are just never going to even probably call you back unless there's something to tell you, but not me. I'm going to contact you every Monday between 9 and 10 a.m. I will make sure that I give you an update of what's gone on from the previous week and what I think we need to do as a next step. He said, great. So every Monday, I would either call him on the phone or I would send him a text of, hey, just wanted to give you an update of, we had this many showings and this is the feedback we got. Based upon that, this is what I think we ought to do. See, that's how you want to separate yourself, is here's how most agents do it, but here's how I do it. So let me give you another example. Let's say that they had been worried about or talked about, and I don't know, I'm just making something up, photos, pictures. Okay, most agents are going to go out and they're going to put their photos up of your house using their cell phone. They're going to take pictures with your cell phone, but not me. That's how most agents do it, but not me. I want to make sure that we present your house in the right light. So I'm going to go hire a professional photographer to come out and take pictures so that we can have your home show best. And then I'll even ask them, have you been on the MLS or the internet? Sorry. Have you been on the internet and done any searches for properties? And they're going to say yes. Have you noticed that some pictures are really good and some pictures are really bad? They're going to say yes. Yeah, that's the difference. Most agents will go use their cell phone, not me. I hire a professional photographer to come out and take your pictures so that they look really good. See, that's how you're going to do it. Most agents do this, but I do this. Most agents do it this way. I do this. Let me give you one other example that you could use. Somebody who's worried about their safety, or, you know, occasionally you'll have people go, oh yeah, I don't want to have a key box on my house because I've heard stories about people that just show up and open the key box and come in right in the middle of while you're eating dinner or something. Okay, great. Let me tell you how I'm different. Most agents are going to use a key box that just will allow an agent to just open it at just about at any time, but not me. Now, here's the thing. Every one of you has a key box that will do this, but most agents don't know that they can do it. And that is, you can put it's called a CBS code, call before showing code, on that, where what I would say, now I don't advertise this to people because I don't want to use the call before showing code, but I will use it if I need to, if somebody's worried about that type of a thing. I would say, look, most agents are either going to use a contractor key box, which you just punch in a code that if their client's looking over their shoulder now has access to your property, or they're going to use an agent one, but that it doesn't have this call before showing code on it. And you're right, they could just open it and come in, but not me. My key box is different. My key box has this code on it that if they don't have the code, they can't open your key box. So again, I'm trying to separate myself. They're over here, I'm over here. Go ahead, Marissa.
Sorry, Kate, I'm so glad that you told me what that was, because I seriously just had that happen on Sunday. I was showing homes for one of my realtor friends, and I'm like, girl, it's asking me for a CBS code. What the heck is a CBS code? Call before showing. Duh. Thank you. Mind blown. Yeah. I've never seen it
that's
before.
What it stands.
And that is an awesome tool that I need to learn how to set up for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, so like I said, it's not something you typically are going to want to just automatically do. I mean, you might, but just for exactly what you just said, Marissa. Yeah, if somebody's concerned, I'm going to use it. But I don't want to use it just on every listing because of exactly what you just did. Is it's asking for this CBS code, and I don't know what that. A lot of agents don't know what it is, or where do I get it, and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
But I present it to the seller as, most agents' key box is just accessible anytime. Mine has this code on it that if you don't put in the code, you still can't open it, even if you're in good standing with the thing. See, now I'm separating myself. You're going to be more safe with me. You're going to be more secure by listing your home with me. That's what you're wanting to do with number 4. All right. Did I beat that one up enough? You guys good with that one? Any questions? Let me see what we got in the chat box here. Oh, just mostly names. Yeah, if you guys, again, just if you're online and you have not put your name and office in the chat box, please put that in there just so that I have it. All right, what are we on next? 4, 5, 5. Okay. So number 5. Now, in fact, actually, I'm going to go back one page here real quick. Before I move on from number 4, or between number 4 and number 5, that's probably the way of saying it. So between number 4 and number 5, remember this from what we started at the very beginning: choose me, then together we'll choose the price. Remember that? We have now gotten to the point that they should have chosen me. Like, meaning everything we've talked about so far should have created the connection. They should trust me. They should feel safe. I should have created value, and I should have separated myself. But it's time to find out. So number 5, in fact, I'm going to erase this, and we'll do it before number 5 even. I'm going to just write it here as, I don't know, what should we call it? Find out, I guess. Oh, why is it not working? I'm just going to put find out. I don't know what we want to call it. What I'm going to do is this. This is where I'm going to check in to see have they chosen me. So I'm going to find out if they've chosen me. And here's what I'm going to ask. So I'm going to say to them, on a scale, so let me back up. Let's use the carpet example. So we're going to go buy these booties. We're going to put it on there. We're only going to let people come through who we know are approved and can afford to buy your house. And so I've just explained all that to them. Now I'm going to say, okay, before we go on to the next piece, I need to find out where I'm at with you. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 0 being you're not going to list your home with me, 10 being 100% you're going to list your home with me. On a scale of 1 to 10, where are we at? So somebody willing to role play that with me.
I'll do it.
All right, cool. All right. So Nagme, close enough?
Yes.
My goal in life is to say your name right.
So
far I'm striking out, but okay. So let's just say we've just talked about your carpet, and I've told you we're going to get the booties and blah, blah, blah. So now, before we go in and start talking about the price, I just wanted to find out where I'm at with you. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being you're going to list your home with me, 0 being, or 1 being you're not, where are we at on a scale of 1 to 10?
I'd say about a 6 or 7.
A 6 or a 7. Okay, great. So what would I have to do in order to get to a 10?
So at this point, I'd like to know, what it is that it would cost me to actually have you list my house.
Okay, sure. Yeah, and that's the next thing we're going to talk about. So let me just ask you though, assuming we can come to an agreement on that, where would you be at on a scale of 1 to 10?
I'd say I'd be a 10.
Okay, great. Then let's go ahead and talk about it. So here's what I'm going to do. So now notice what I'm going to do at this point is I got to find out, has she chosen me? Because if she has chosen me, then great. I'm going to move on to price. If she hasn't chosen me yet, I got to figure out why. And I got to figure out how to get her to choose me. So when I ask on a scale of 1 to 10, where are we at? If she tells me anything lower than a 10, I am going to say, well, then what has to happen to get to a 10? What would have to happen? Because I've probably missed something. So I want to find out what has to happen. Now, occasionally you'll get somebody that says, oh, go ahead, Kelly, question.
Yeah. And so most of the problems that I have is, if I'm doing a presentation, you get the people that they just want to interview more agents. They don't even know what they're looking for really. Right.
Okay.
And no matter what you say, or, I've done what well, what is it going to take, and trying to find out what their real concerns are, but they're just like stubborn, they just want to,
hey, let's role
we
play
just want to find out what, right.
Okay, let's role play it. So
Well, I'm not stubborn like they are.
Well,
I'm more logical.
Be stubborn. No, be them. Be stubborn like they are. I'm going to show you what I would do.
Okay.
Okay. So Kelly, on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you say that we're at in terms of you listing your home with me?
Well, I think it's pretty high. I like what you're saying and stuff. It's around a 7 or 8, but I've got these other agents that I want to interview with and just find out what else is out there. I'm kind of new to this. This is my first home that I'm selling, and I just want to know what's out there.
Hey, sure. Hey, and Kelly, you know what? If I were you, I would feel the exact same way. So now notice the first thing I'm doing, guys, is I'm going to empathize with them. If I were you, I would feel the same way. So you always want to do that. If they're saying something like that, hey, if I were you, I would want to do the same thing. Totally makes sense to me. Make them right. First thing. Okay. So I'm going to say, hey, Kelly, if I were you, I would want to do the exact same thing. I totally understand where you're coming from on that. So, let me ask you though, based upon that, what have I not answered for you that would make you feel comfortable in listing your home with me?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's my point, right? So I
Okay.
just want to talk to other people and see what's going on, right? So I really don't even know what the question is, but if I talk to enough people, right, then I'll know a bigger picture.
Okay, perfect. Well, let's do this then. So it sounds like to me that you're pretty much what I heard from that is that until you've talked to a few other people, you're not listing with anybody. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. Good.
Like
let's
if the next person
then.
came in, then we've got 2 or 3 of them already lined up. I figure after we get to that third one, then we'll kind of have a better idea of what, of what's out there, or what we need to be looking for.
Yeah. Well, here's the good news for you, Kelly. I already know what's out there, and I can answer those questions for you if you want.
Right. But I don't even know what the question is.
I'm just kidding. Okay. So yeah, you're doing perfect. You're doing exactly what I wanted you to do. When you come across that person who is just no, I've got to meet with other people, here's how I handle it. Is I'm going to say, great, let's do this then. So Kelly, let's do this. Let's pause where we're at right now, because I can understand where you're coming from, and I can see that you really want to do your due diligence to make sure you do know what's out there and you know what questions to be asking and stuff, right?
Right.
Okay, good. So let's do this. Let's stop where we're at right now. Let's just pause and let's let you go meet with those other agents. Now, would it be okay if I gave you some ideas of some things to ask people about?
Sure.
Okay, because like I said, I do this every day, so I know what questions are out there. I know what things are out there, and I appreciate when you said you like what I've had to say. That means a lot to me. So thank you. But here's what I want you to ask these other agents. When you meet with the other agents, I want you to ask them how many buyers there are for your home. Will you do that?
Okay.
Because here's why I say that is at the end of the day, like from what you and I have talked about, it sounds like getting the best price for your home was most important, right?
Right.
Yeah. So with that being the case, just thinking of simple supply and demand economics, it would make sense that the way you're going to get the most money for your home is if there is more demand for your house. I mean, that makes sense, right?
Right.
Okay, good. So what I want you to do is I want you to ask these other agents, how many buyers are there for your home? Now, depending on how they respond to that and what they say, should be the thing that determines how much credibility you're going to give to them.
Well, how many buyers do you have for my home?
Oh, perfect. I'm so glad you asked that question. Now, before I answer that though, I want you to meet with these other agents and talk to them. So we're going to continue our conversation after you have met with those other agents. Okay. And I'm going to answer that question, but I first want you to see how they're going to answer, because it'll mean more when I answer it for you than after you've asked them. Now, here's what I want you to expect though. When you are going to interview these other agents and you ask the question of how many buyers are there for my home, some of them, they're going to give you one of two answers. They're either going to say there's only one buyer for your home, which that's true. Like there is only one buyer for your house. But how many potential buyers are there in the market right now for your house? Because if they don't know that answer, I would be really worried about listing my home with them if I were you. And the reason I don't want to answer the question for you right now is I want you to see how they're going to respond, and then I want you to compare that to what I have to say. Now, with that being said, the other option of what they're going to say to you is, oh, there's just tons of buyers out there for your house. Well, that would scare me a little bit, because what that tells me is they have no idea. So I want you to ask that question, and then we'll get back together and I'm going to answer that question for you, and I'm going to show you how many buyers there are for your home. Sound good?
Okay.
So when is your last appointment with the, you said you've got 2 other agents, is that right?
Yeah.
So when is your last appointment?
What's today? Wednesday?
Yep.
Friday at noon.
Okay, so Friday at noon is your last appointment. Perfect. So could I come at 1?
Yes.
Okay, good. Now I deserve, what I'm going to ask of you, I shouldn't say I deserve. What I'm going to ask of you is that you'll promise me that you're not going to list with them until I've had a chance to come and answer the question for you.
Okay.
Deal?
Deal.
Okay, good. Now, let me stop with what I've done with you guys so you guys can understand what I just did. Essentially, what I'm going to do in that scenario is I just set those other agents up to fail. And here's why. You guys tell me, either throw in the chat box or you answer me. If somebody asked you today, how many buyers are there for my home? How would you answer it? What would you say?
How many homes are available in the market in that area?
Okay, but
2,900 in the whole state.
Okay, but how many buyers are there for their house? How would you answer it?
I don't even know how to, like, I wouldn't know how many.
I'd let them know that it's, oh, sorry.
Okay. Well, so now look, I'm assuming you guys are the agents. I'm the seller. Okay. So I'm the seller asking you as the agent. So Ryan, how many buyers are there for my house? I don't know. I guess you tell me. How much could I sell my house for?
Well, that's why we need to still go through some of the processes. Get the comparable analysis.
So can you guys hear Ryan or no? Okay, so he's saying I got to figure out what the price is and go through some things first, is how he's answering it so far. Okay, so let's do that then.
So what you did was you are buying your time so that you can do your research.
Hang on one sec. Let me change one thing and see.
Okay, now say it. Okay, so can you guys hear him now?
Yes.
What I think you've done is you've bought yourself time so that you can do your homework and come back to them with some good, solid answers back.
Okay, good. Yeah, so can you guys hear him? Okay, good. So yes, but truthfully, the way that I'm going to approach it, I'm already going to have that data anyway. So I don't need to buy the time, I guess is what I'm saying. Is I don't need to buy the time, but that's good. Ultimately, what I'm doing is I'm trying to create some curiosity in them to want to still meet with me. Here's the other thing that I know. Typically, people will list with the last person they meet with. So once I get that, Kelly, and they're saying, well, I've got these other agents I'm going to meet with, chances are pretty good the last agent they meet with, they're going to list with. So for me, I'm now trying to say, I want to be that last one, which is why I'm saying, when are you going to meet with them? So I'm setting it up so that I can be the last one to meet with them. And I want them to be curious enough that they don't list with somebody else because they say, well, no, I promised this other guy I would meet with him first. Because I know if I can get out there, then I'm going to get the listing. Now, but I still want to hear from you guys. What are you going to say? How are you going to answer it?
I'm going to say it's a seller's market, and hopefully if we price it right, we'll run into a multiple offer situation.
Okay, so now notice though, I'm setting you guys up to fail because they can't give you an answer of a specific number. I wouldn't list my home with them. So Marissa, when you say that to them, the seller now is going, oh, this is what Russ was talking about. They can't give me an answer. See, all of a sudden I'm setting it up so that they're discounting you as the agent. So somebody else give me some answers. What else are you going to say? How are you gonna answer it?
So however many homes, like if there's 20 homes for sale in the area, then I'd say there's 20 buyers out there for you.
Okay.
I guess my answer would be, I'm gonna look till I find you the right buyer. I mean, I don't think I could come up with a number. I think at that point it would be just all of my effort and how hard I'm gonna look to find that buyer.
Right. So you just lost the listing. So you just lost the listing.
Did I lose it?
Kelly, maybe. But so here's the question that I would say to you. So if I showed back up to the seller and the seller said, well, I talked to this one agent and he said, however many listings there are, there's that many buyers, I would go, interesting. All right, let me show you that. Now, here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to show them how many buyers there are for their house. Now, let me give you guys kind of the quick and dirty way of how you do this. Is what I'm going to do is I'm going to go do a search for homes that are similar to theirs in the same location. So I want to find homes that are similar to theirs in the same location. And I want to see in the last 45 days, how many homes sold that were similar to theirs. So similar floor plan, layout, square footage, location. And I'm going to look for how many sold in the last 45 days. Now, we don't have time to do this today, but if we were, I could jump on and show you guys that what we would find is there's probably 4 or 5 houses in a reasonable low, sized area of people that are looking for a home just like me. Let me say it differently. If their home had been on the market within the last 45 days, it potentially could have been bought by one of these people because it's what they were looking for. So hopefully that makes sense. What I have found is you're typically going to find somewhere in the 3 to 5. I mean, it could be 6, it could be 2, it could be 7, but you're going to come up with a number of homes that have gone under contract that are similar to theirs in the last 45-day window. If you were to go on the MLS and do a search in any 45-day window, you're going to come up with about the same number. That's what I'm saying. So if I looked back 45 days from now, I'm going to come up with 4 or 5 houses, let's just say, and it doesn't matter what the number is. What if it was 20? But if it was 3 or 6, what you're going to find is any 45-day window that you search in that same area, you are going to find about the same number. Like meaning, let's say that I found 5. If I do search any other 45-day window, it might be 6 or it might be 4, but it's going to be about the same number. That even actually goes for, if you were to look back to 2008, 2009, 2010, it might be 1 or 2 less, but it's about the same. So what I'm saying to you guys is when I go present it to them, that's how I'm going to show them. I'm going to say, look, in the last 45 days, this is how many homes sold that were like yours. And when I say like yours, meaning style, square footage, that kind of stuff. Well, what that means is if any 45-day window that I looked in, there were about, let's just say between 3 and 5 homes that have sold, that would tell me that currently right now today, there are between 3 and 5 people looking for their house. See, what it does is now I can set myself apart as like Most agents go after a buyer with a shotgun. And when I say a shotgun, think of how a shotgun works, is it sprays bullets like everywhere. So it just versus a rifle is more targeted of like you're aiming and you're putting the red dot or, on a laser on. That's what we're trying to do. And that's what I want the seller to see. So I know this is a long way of answering your question, Kelly, but ultimately is I want the seller to see, I know the market. I understand what I'm doing in pricing a property that other agents don't know. And because if I know we're going after 3 or 4 people, now watch this. Watch this. This is where this is powerful. Is if I do that and I go look at it. Now, let me give you, I'll just give you the first example that comes to my head of this. I had an agent who I was teaching this to that had a property that wasn't selling. She couldn't get her property sold. And I said, okay, let's go back and look in the last 45 days, the properties that sold that were similar to this. And so what we did is we jumped on the MLS and we found in the last 45 days, every home that was similar, it was a townhouse. So I said, let's find any townhouse complexes that are close by that are similar size and everything. And let's look for, think of it this way, is what we're trying to do is profile the buyer. We're trying to figure out who is the buyer that would buy this property. Now, when I say that, I don't mean the specifics of who's going to buy the property, but the profile of them. And so what I mean by that is this. When we looked back in the last 45 days, what we found is at that time, and this has been probably 10 years ago, maybe more, but we found every one of the townhouses that had sold was at between 95 and 99,000. Well, if that's the case, and at the time her property was listed at like 102 or 101. Well, nothing had even gone under contract that was listed above 100. So I said, okay, so there's the first thing. Is the buyer of this property is not even looking if it's over 100,000. And then I said, what else is in common? Let's look at what else is in common. What we found was that every single one of those had asked for between $3,000 and $4,000 in closing costs. So I said, your seller needs to just, if we know that's the case, if we know every buyer is going to come in and ask for closing costs, then let's just advertise it that way. Let's put on the MLS, seller will pay up to $3,000 towards buyer's closing costs. That's going to make the property more attractive because we already know the buyer's going to ask for it anyway. So let's set ourselves apart from everybody else by just saying, we'll pay $3,000 in closing costs. So she did. She said, let's get the property to 100,000 and let's offer 3,000 in closing costs. They did it, went under contract immediately. See, if you can figure out what the profile is, here's the other thing that I mean by that. To some extent, you can go back on these properties in the last 45 days and call the buyer's agent and ask them, where did your buyer move from? Like that could be one too, because maybe you find out that all of the buyers are moving from a certain area. Let me give you an example on that. The neighborhood I live in, almost every house that sells in my neighborhood right now, the buyer comes from one of two places. It's either a relative of somebody or a friend of somebody in the neighborhood, or they moved from the neighborhoods that are just outside of my neighborhood. So right outside of my neighborhood, the surrounding neighborhoods within really maybe a mile, almost every buyer that buys in there comes from that area. So if I know that, now I can say to the seller, I'm going to go knock on all the doors of these homes. So like if I was going to be trying to get a property sold in my neighborhood that I live in, now to some extent in today's market, you throw it on the MLS, it's going to sell. It doesn't, like if it's priced even close, you're going to sell. But to some extent, I want to say, look, if I wanted to try to double end the property, which I do, I'm going to go knock on all the doors in the surrounding neighborhoods and just saying, hey, we've got a property that just listed in this neighborhood. See, if you can figure out where the buyers are moving from, you can now go target that area to find the buyer. All right, I got on a way off on a tangent on that. Did I answer your question, Kelly, of how I'm going to handle that when they want to meet with another agent?
Yes.
I was going to say, Kelly fell asleep. He hung up. He was
No.
He was like Marissa. He had to go check on the baby because he was sick of listening to me, right?
No.
All right, cool. Okay, so now so the find out, I got to find out where they're at on a scale of 1 to 10. Are they going to list their home with me? If the answer is yes, then great. I list the property. If it's no, don't move on. But once I'm ready to move on, now I'm going to go to number 5. Number 5 is going to be the, we can call it price on here, I guess. But remember, the first thing I'm going to do is talk about the macro. So I'm going to talk about big picture. So here's how I would handle it today, is I would be saying to the seller, let me tell you about what's going on in the market. In our market today, we have record low inventory. We have record low interest rates. So properties are selling really quickly, which is good. But even with that being said, if your property is overpriced, if you ask too much, it's not going to sell. Now, so here's the thing. I've got somebody, and it's not my listing, but a neighbor of mine listed their house just recently, and they listed it for probably at least 50,000, if not 75 or 100,000 overpriced. Even in our market where record low inventory, multiple offers, it didn't sell. They finally just pulled it off the market. Because why they did it is one of the neighbors put their home on the market and it sold for a price that even I was like, no way. Like, I can't believe you got that. Well, so then these guys tried an even higher price. Well, when it didn't work, they're like, all right, we'll just take it off the market. Now, so I want to be explaining that to people of here's what's going on in the market. Yes, properties are selling. Yes, they're for multiple offers, but you still got to be reasonable. Now, I will list a property at any price that somebody wants to do it. I don't really care. You decide what price you want to list it at. We'll list it at that. I don't really care. As long as B, they'll follow my pricing strategy. So here's the next thing that I'm going to talk about with the seller is here's what's going on in the market. When we list your home and we can try, people a lot of times want to try a higher price. I don't recommend that. I wouldn't recommend it. You would be better off to underprice your home and get the multiple offers that drive the price up than you are to go too high. As soon as you're too high, then people will just pass by, or they if it gets stale on the market, they worry about it. So we want to keep an eye on the pricing. And here's what I'm going to tell them is ultimately we want to keep an eye on your price, and every 2 to 3 weeks in today's market, I would say 2 weeks is max. Every 2 weeks, we need to be improving the price. I say it is improving rather than reducing. We got to improve your price. But ultimately, I mean, reduce the price. And we're going to do that based on the number of showings that we get. So the number of showings and the number of offers. And here's what I tell them. No showings, no offers. We need to reduce the price or improve the price between 7 and 10%. If we are getting some showings, and I would define that as 1 to 3 a week, but no offers, we need to reduce the price or improve the price by 5%. So here's what that looks like. Sorry, I hit it. All right. So no showings, no offers. The price is between 7 and 10% needs to come down. Now that doesn't mean that that's totally right, but meaning like if that's all we have to do, because it could be that they're 20% overpriced, and if you reduced it 10, you're still 10% overpriced. So I've got to reduce it by that. In the event that we're getting showings but no offers, we need to reduce the price by 5%. And that's once you get within 5, it'll sell. Go ahead.
I just have a question regarding pricing. You said we can price it out whatever seller wants, but it's not going to be like let's say if we have an offer and then initially doesn't match that offer, like house is less.
Mm-hmm. So it doesn't appraise?
It doesn't appraise.
Mm-hmm. So if it doesn't appraise, then we'll have to go. So first thing is I'm going to try to go to the appraiser and show them my comparables and try to get them to bring the appraisal up. Mm-hmm. But in the event they won't bring the appraisal up, then I've got to go to the seller and try to say, okay, this is all it's going to sell for. So what do you want to do? Mm-hmm. So yeah, great question. All right. So that's where I'm going to explain pricing. And then C, letter C on this is the CMA. We're going to go through the specifics of their home. And that's where I'm going to then show them what I showed you guys. If I need to, I'm going to get into, let me show you why I'm more knowledgeable about the market than other agents are. Okay. All right. We good on the price? Okay, good. Then next, number 6 then, oops. Forgot to change my color there. Number 6 then is going to be close. So essentially, I'm just going to close now. Now that we've landed on the price, I'm going to say to them, and you should be able to, because remember at the start of this, I said to them, hey, let me tell you what we're going to talk about. We're going to first talk about your needs, wants, and expectations. Then we're going to talk about what I do to get a home sold. We'll then talk about the pricing. And then if you're comfortable and confident in everything we've talked about, I'm going to ask you to sign paperwork. Okay? They said, okay. So they've already agreed to that. Then we got to the before price where I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how comfortable and confident are you and me being the agent? And I'm not moving on to price until they either say they're ready to list with me or they say, well, it depends on the price. Great. If we can agree on price, you'll list with me? Yes. Now we go to this and I get them to agree to a price. Now that we've agreed to the price, essentially all that's left is to sign the paperwork. So now when I get to the close, is just going to be, all right, so how soon did you want their home to hit to the market? Did you want it to be on Friday or do you want it to be tomorrow on Thursday? And then they're going to say to me, oh, well, probably Friday. Okay, great. Let's do it. Let's get it signed. So essentially, notice how a good presentation, the natural ending is close. See, hopefully, once we land on the price, they're saying to me, hey, so what do we need to do to get the property listed? Like, hopefully, they're just straight out asking me on that. Make sense? What questions? My Apple Pencil is about to die, so I'm apparently done writing. So let me. All right, what questions?
I would say that I noticed in your asking them on a scale of 1 to 10, where am I at? You're almost creating an agreement that they're going to sign with you right there, an underlying tone of, oh, well, I've already said that I would rank him here, and if he can answer this question for me, then I would go with him. And in the back of their mind, they're going to retain.
Yeah, right on. Yep, that's exactly right. So good. Did you guys hear that okay? I see some head nods, so I guess they did. All right, cool. All right, guys. Hey, so thanks for being here. So tomorrow, well, same time, so 9 a.m. tomorrow, 10 a.m. for Utah. So 9 in California, 10 in Utah. We'll start. I will be in the 6th floor tomorrow for sure, because I have the room reserved. Wednesdays, for some reason, I did not get it scheduled. So tomorrow, 9 o'clock California time, 10 o'clock Utah, in the 6th floor training room. And we're going to talk about SOI. Here's what I will tell you. Of everything I've taught you guys, you do not want to miss tomorrow's class. Because tomorrow's class, if you will do what I teach you tomorrow and follow the process, it is the only thing that I will 100% say, if you'll do it, it will work. 100%. Like, it's guaranteed to work. Like, to some extent, I would 99% guarantee everything else, 100% on this one. You do this, it is going to work. And it is a no-fail system of working your sphere of influence. That, and I'll give you just a prelude to it, it's by using a closed system versus an open. The way most people work their sphere of influence is through an open system. And I'll explain what that means tomorrow. I'm going to teach you how to do it through a closed system. And in a closed system, it is guaranteed to work. So anyway, okay. Thanks for being here, guys.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. See you all tomorrow. Yeah, you're welcome.